Hi, my name is Charlie Phillips, and for the past 3 months, I've been studying the topic of drug cartel violence and operations. I chose this topic because it hits very close to home. Many cities in the United States have been decimated by illegal drug usage, and these effects are only getting worse. To explore this topic, I chose the book Hunting El Chapo by Andrew Holgan. I chose this book because it covered how drug kingpins like El Chapo control the cartel trade and continue to spark extreme violence throughout Mexico and even America. For those who are not familiar with my topic, the Mexican cartel, specifically stemming from the Sinaloa region of Mexico, is the most powerful drug trafficking organization in the entire world. These cartels traffic drugs like cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and marijuana illegally into the rest of the world. The violence that has been caused by these cartels is absolutely disgusting, and so far, there is no foreseeable end to it. In the book I'm reading, Hunting El Chapo, author Andrew Hogan explains how cartel operations take place through the eyes of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. El Chapo is one of the most renowned kingpins, which is head of operations for the Sinaloan cartel. The author of my book, Andrew Hogan, was a DEA special agent who led the manhunt that captured El Chapo in 2014. I found this interesting because it revealed a first-person perspective on the capture of the world's most dangerous drug boss. Throughout the book, Hogan focuses heavily on his own feelings and experiences throughout his career hunting El Chapo. Hogan created a tone of suspense, emphasizing the betrayals and narrow escapes throughout the pursuit of El Chapo. For example, rather than offering a broad political view on the drug trade, Hogan focused on how El Chapo operated. He goes into detail on how DEA teams intercepted multiple BlackBerry messages and calls between El Chapo's inner circle. He provided evidence through wiretaps that revealed how the Sinaloan cartel arranged drug shipments, coordinated escapes, and conducted violence on Mexican citizens. However, I believe that the most important topic that Andrew Hogan touched was not El Chapo himself, but I believe it was the information regarding the corruption in government and officials in Mexico. One of the biggest reasons that the violence is pursuing in Mexico and even the U.S. is because the cartel is actively protecting corrupt politicians and law enforcement. This means that the drug trafficking can persist freely with no government or military interception. This poses a huge threat to the well-beings of millions of people. Hundreds of innocent people are being murdered in cold blood, and there's no law enforcement willing to step in to stop this violence. Overall, this book contributed to the knowledge behind my topic because it gave me a real insight on what's really going on in these cartel operations. Another factor that aids in the cartel's success is brainwashing. While that might seem like an extreme statement, it is the truth. Touching on my Rehugo government document, I cited an article written by Katie Watson for the British Broadcasting Company. Katie Watson is a well-respected reporter who travels to many different countries to develop editorials. In this editorial, Watson decided to travel to Mexico to do research on the Sinaloan cartel. The information that she gathered was very shocking. She learned that most of these Mexican cities that hold these cartels view their kingpins like El Chapo as saint-like figures. Watson interviewed many locals, where she gathered the info that they view as El Chapo as a Robin Hood type of character. This is because people have been fed propaganda by these cartels over many years. For example, El Chapo claimed that he had significantly developed infrastructure in many towns all over Mexico. However, due to research gathered by DEA agents and etc., this is a blatant lie fed to the locals to keep their trust. There's no evidence of any infrastructure or any type of food or anything done that's good by El Chapo to benefit his community. Additionally, these locals seem to view drug trafficking as their only way to make money. This is because they have been exposed to the cartel violence at a very early age, and they've had to grow up with this violence continuing. And they view joining the cartels as their only chance of survival. To touch on the violence aspects of these cartels, viewer discretion is advised because I will be covering disturbing topics. In my history document, I covered a noteworthy, gruesome event that occurred very recently in Mexico on March 5th, 2025. On this date, a dozen missing students' bodies were found dismembered underneath a bloody tarp in Oaxaca, Mexico. A bag of 8 pairs of hands was also found near the site. The cartel is the number one suspect for this event due to the uniform nature of the crime. The tarp was found near a highway leading into cartel country. No drug traces were found on these students, leading to the assumption that they were killed by drug traders to make an example. Additionally, these drug traffickers have begun human trafficking. According to CNN, on July 2, 2024, 19 bodies were found in an abandoned truck in the Mexican state of Chiapas near the border of Guatemala. These bodies were confirmed to have resulted from the human trafficking of the cartel. So this leads me to the question, how can we stop this violence? As I researched this topic, I learned that there are many different views that people have on how to fix this issue. In my Rehugo opinion document, I found a political cartoon made on November 8, 2019 by Stephen Sack that I believe
the scorpion
illustrates
represents
the issues of
cartels,
the
and
cartel.
Uncle Sam with the illicit drug demand shirt represents America's demand on the cartels for drugs. As you look closer, you can see Uncle Sam throwing the blame on the cartels. While they do deserve to be blamed, all the blame is not on the cartels, as there is a lot on the United States of America. As you can see, the cartel continues to kill innocents while we continue to buy drugs from the cartel. While the cartel does deserve blame for the atrocities that they're committing, we, as a country, need to accept our part in this issue. While people are talking about drug trafficking, they hardly recognize the real demand behind these drugs. In my research, I have identified 3 ways that we could put an end to cartel operations. 1 is by clearing out corruption in government and law enforcement in Mexico, specifically Sinaloa. 2 is by putting an end to cartel recruitment. And 3 is by significantly reducing the American demand for drugs. In order to reduce the corruption of law enforcement and government in Mexico, the United States could help out by installing reformations of institutions. For example, we could help professionalize their police force, and we could install independent anti-corruption agencies. This will help by monitoring government and police activity in the country to make sure that everything's going right. And the United States helping will be a big part due to our large amount of money and police and military engagement. As I've done my research, I've noticed that a lot of first-hand perspectives state that cartel recruitment is a large part of the issues going on in Mexico. Most of these men and women are just trying to provide for their families, but they have no other choice. However, I believe that we can stop this recruitment by fixing broken communities. By rebuilding schools, clinics, and community centers through American funding, these people will recognize that there are many different righteous paths that they could take that avoid cartel conflict. Additionally, by not launching national media campaigns, the true despair of cartel lifestyles could be exposed, deterring many people from joining. And now, the true power horse behind the cartel operations is the American drug demand. As an American, I recognize that we love to point fingers at Mexico for the cartel despair. However, we are part of the problem. To put an end to the American drug demand, I have concluded that it would be most beneficial to offer economic alternatives to poor communities. Many drug users and dealers come from economically devastated areas. By creating better jobs, schools, and communities, we can reduce drug usage and demand in America, which would power down the flow of money to cartels. All in all, there are many perspectives on this issue. However, we can all agree that the violence needs to end. We all have to take responsibility for these issues in order to make a change. What can you do to make a difference?